All right. Modern Relics Podcast. I'm Angel. He's Lucky. It's hot outside. We're back.
How hot is it?
We're 109. We've gone down
You
a
guys,
couple of degrees. Really cooling off.
109.
Yeah.
Where,
How
where
is
were
it
you prior
there?
to that?
Uh,
Um,
got to like
you go ahead.
113, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we're cruising in the mid 90s.
Mm.
So, which I'm pretty excited about. I like 4th of July was kind of actually cooler. But Aaron's birthday's coming up and we're happy because we're gonna actually, her and I, the kids are both working. So her and I are actually gonna go to Silverwood for the day.
Nice.
Which, for those who don't know, Silverwood is I think it's the only theme park within like 500 miles of this place,
Yeah.
if not more. Weird little like kind of Knott's Berry Farm-ish theme park, full roller coaster theme park. It's not like a family fun center or anything. It's a full theme park, seasonal, up north of Coeur d'Alene by about like 15-20 minutes, and in the middle of nowhere. It's very odd, but it's kind of known in this area. Everyone, like a ton of the high school kids, my son works there. He's a rides operator there. But they have a giant like water park, huge water park, and they've got this big like lazy river with a bar in it and stuff. And so her and I are just going to go hang out in the sun and float the lazy river for the whole day,
Nice.
then go get Mexican food for her birthday. So we're looking forward to that. It's supposed to be like 96, I think, or something like that
Oh,
day.
wow.
So yeah, so we're pretty happy. Speaking of
Yeah.
the 4th,
Yeah.
how was your 4th?
It was good. I got to spend some time with my buddy and his wife and a couple of friends.
Nice.
Just barbecued, hung out. It's funny on the drive home. It was like probably right around 10 o'clock, and the whole drive. And he lives on the exact opposite end of where I do from the city center, so it's a good 40-minute drive. But the whole ride home was just a series of fireworks alongside the freeway on both sides, through every neighborhood I went through, all of that. And there were plenty of drunk drivers, so it was a little nerve wracking. Like at one point, there were 5 or 6 of us doing, I don't know, 55 on the freeway, just huddled into a little line, trying to avoid this guy that was swerving around. We actually saw a police SUV get behind the guy and pull him over, and we're like, yay. We all kind of like broke back into lanes and kept going. But yeah, I mean, it was fun. It was pretty low key. I didn't have any plans. Normally I'm coming home from vacation on the 4th of July. There's a lot of stuff that's happening. I didn't go anywhere for vacation this year. I'm on vacation actually until next Monday. So just chilling for the most part, but it was good. Nothing really exciting or involved, I suppose. How about you?
Actually, it was way more mellow than normal for us. Aaron and I were in the parade for the Trad Fam
Yeah.
Parade that we're a part of every year. Aaron helps out with the organization element of it, and I tend to run security. I get asked to every year because I just know all of the players on kind of the bad players on both sides of the perspective, and so I can spot them and go, okay guys, southwest corner, go grab them, or don't let them in because they're trying to get in to get a photo op with the organization. So our morning was spent doing that, and really after that we ended up just walking around downtown, which we hadn't done in a long time since it was just the two of us. Got some lunch, went here, went there, and then we ended up going back to the house, and I think we went to dinner at like Mackenzie River. And oddly, I had to jokingly make a complaint to the management because on like 70% of their giant TVs that were in that restaurant, they were playing cricket. Like on their sports TVs. And what worse day? What more un-American thing that you could do on the 4th of July than play cricket?
Which is a game that even cricket players don't understand. So I've been told. Like, I heard some of those games can go on for like multiple days on end, and it's like, this doesn't make sense to me.
None at all. I still have no desire to even learn the rule structure of that game. But what was odd is that we found out that the teams that were playing, which was on Root Sports, was Seattle versus Washington, D.C. Because apparently last year, this is the second year, they started a professional American cricket league. Sure. And I don't care. It was still un-American to have that on TV. So, but yeah, that was about it. Then we came back and drugged the dogs with CBD till they were drooling.
Yeah.
So they didn't try to attack the sky, because my dogs aren't scared of fireworks. They want to kill them.
Yeah.
And so they're just in a constant state of frenzy.
I think it's because dogs are at heart communists and hate freedom, like with the most animus a creature can have for freedom. So they call each other comrade and stuff. They're not scared of fireworks. They're just the most devoted socialists. And
so either Arthur and Gwynny were either really happy and excited and celebrating, or they were communistically.
Yeah, I think it's communism.
Yeah. So, well, we drugged them into a state of stupor. So they.
Because really, there's only so many times you can tell your dog, like, those are just fireworks, and like they're not going to get it. They're not understanding.
No. Yeah. So you fill them full of CBD until their eyes are rolling around in their heads, and they sleep for a full day. And
there you go.
So, but they're back to normal now.
That's good news.
But yeah, outside of that, I did bounce one groiper again this year who tried to get in. Spotted him right away. Same dude. Luke Hogan, every year he tries to get in. Thought he'd be sneaky and get in on the other side and down the way a little bit, but I caught him. So, but outside of that, there were no hiccups. There was a lot of worry that we were going to have some type of event at our parade this year.
I'll say people everywhere were talking about it, even down here.
Oh man. And coming off the heels of something that was a national, once again, Coeur d'Alene became the subject of a national spotlight situation with the shooter up on Canfield Mountain. And for those who don't know the Coeur d'Alene area well, Canfield Mountain is the eastern side of Coeur d'Alene's, the mountain range that Hayden and Dalton Gardens and Coeur d'Alene hug up against Canfield Mountain. It's just a known little mountain hill right there, but there's a whole bunch of neighborhoods that kind of are like crested and nestled up against that hillside. But there's nothing really over there outside of residential. Like, it is deep residential. There's maybe a school. Most of that area used to be like my great grandfather's dairy farm, so like there's nothing really over there. So and it is, I wouldn't say rural, but it's out of the way. So when the firefighters got a call from a bunch of people that there was a fire on Canfield, and a lot of details have come out. First, there was a whole bunch of misinformation that we were all getting fed. And then when all the details came out, not all of them made perfect sense. Yeah. But at the same time, we have not yet received anything to contradict it. So the kid is...
So essentially what happened there is a fire started. Firefighters responded to the call, and then were promptly shot and killed.
Yes,
That's
and the
that's
first
what appears
the
to have
first
happened, but the circumstances around it were, I mean, I guess are still up for debate. And when did this occur? You were still in Las Vegas, so this would have been last
I was.
Saturday before last.
Yeah, I think it was the 28th or 29th, somewhere around there.
Sunday, because I was flying home. I was at the airport when I started hearing about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I'm, like I've said before in the past, I'm really good friends with the sheriff who was at the head of the investigation the entire time, but multiple agencies from around the area came in because there were reports of multiple shooters.
Mhm.
There was reports of many more people getting shot than what actually happened. We were hearing between 8 and 11 people getting shot, firefighters and law enforcement, when in fact only 3 did. So 2 of them were killed and one of them was severely injured. He's currently in the hospital, and he was recovering from his wounds, but it's now kind of slipped back because of infection. So he's gotten some issues with sepsis. So keep prayers up for that, gentleman.
Mhm.
One of the things that I can say before I go on into any of these details is that the outpouring from this community was unlike anything I've ever seen. Once again, this community came together like I've never seen,
Yeah.
since like the Gun Lane event or, but when something big happens to people like our firefighters or our law enforcement here, the community really comes out. The amount of money, the amount of food donated, the amount of water donated, the people that followed the processions and that lined every freeway and like the entire downtown was flooded with silent supporters, dead silent as they drove by. The community really came together for these guys and for the support of our local fire department and the tragedy that happened there. I think that Sheriff Norris did a fantastic job with managing the situation and getting it handled quickly.
Yeah.
And but there's still a lot of questions, and a lot of questions are where did there's speculation as to where this kid came from and why he was here. He was 20 years old. His name, why am I blanking on his name? I can't remember his name. Raleigh was his last name. But that why Raleigh was here, he's been reported to have lived in everywhere from New York to Arizona. There were early reports that he was born in Russia. There was a lot of people who were trying to say that he was, there was a speculation going around that it was some type of Iranian terrorist cell attack, which got dismissed
West
pretty
Raleigh?
quickly. Yes, West
Okay.
Raleigh. Yeah. Now he lived in the area for a while. He lived up in Sandpoint for a bit, but he was living down in this area. He was working for a tree service company. But there was a lot of reports that he was living in his van. He got kicked out of his apartment because his roommate said he was acting super weird. And that there was a significant change in him. A lot of people want to tie it politically one way or the other. He had been denied, apparently, looking to try to get into fire service, but it probably had to do with age or many other factors.
Yeah.
But
is that confirmed,
had been
or is that just another rumor?
I think it was just another rumor.
Yeah.
But he also confirmed was living in his van, and he was living in his van in Post Falls down by Quemlin Park.
Down by the river.
And yeah, there was speculation that he was also living in an apartment off of Fernan Lake. So there's so many different kind of ways to go with this. The political stuff where, his mom and his stepdad were big Trump supporters, and they taught him how to do this kind of stuff was what the left is saying, and the right is saying, well, no, it was in retaliation to them because he hated Trump and he hated his parents, and there's
Well, it has
tons
to
of
be.
speculation.
You got to throw Trump in there somehow. Like,
Right.
I
He's gotta
stubbed
be
my toe
involved.
this morning. Fucking Trump.
Yeah.
Like that's just how the news sells, because the news needs to sell, because it's going to get
Yeah.
replaced.
'Cause
I
it
heard
needs to
everything.
be
I heard Iranian terrorist. I heard occultist. I heard
Yeah.
what did I hear? I heard that this was the fucking 34-year anniversary of the Richard Butler compound stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, well, if that was
Heard
an
that too.
anniversary, they would have hit on the same day the next year, not 34
Yeah.
fucking, like if he's 20 years old, that predates his life by 15 years. That wouldn't even
Yeah.
that wouldn't have even hit his radar. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
yeah, I just the absolute zoo animals throwing shit at one another that was being printed in the press from the
Yeah.
moment this started happening to right now. I still don't know what happened, other than 2 people died, one's in the hospital, and they were responding to a fire. And apparently the conclusion one could draw is the fire was set by the guy that shot those 2, and now he's dead. So with, when the suspect winds up dead, it's always going to be a big, bold question mark forever on what the motivations were and all this stuff. So I think it just yields an absolute wide open window for people to say whatever the hell they want about stuff they have no real factual claim on, because we were reading very detailed information with what you and I thought were AI photos of the suspect that were coming out that made not a lot of sense before any local information was even released in the press. We had national stories coming out outlining the subject matter behind the suspect, what the suspect looked like, a bunch of different narrative motivations, and no real regard or care for the area, the fire, the people that were shot, the community. It was all just, let's pump out as much words on page as we can with whatever we need to, and do your best to make sure this is Trump's fault.
Yeah. Well,
Wow.
and it was wild right out of the gate, and a couple of things have come to light that might help out a little bit. Minor detail stuff. Apparently, he had talked to the firefighters. Like, they asked him to move his car, and he got in a confrontation with the firefighters, and it was shortly thereafter that he started shooting at him. Now, that being said, the gun used was not a rifle. Apparently, it was a shotgun, which doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. If they recovered a shotgun and 2 people died from it, you did not shoot those 2 people from 200 to 400 yards away.
Right. And as a 20-year-old kid.
As a 20-year-old kid, that makes perfect fucking sense. So whether he started the fire or not, and they're responding to it, and they're asking him to move his car or get out of the way or whatever, and then a confrontation happens and 2 people end up dead. Yeah, you can kill somebody with a shotgun pretty close up. So perhaps that's what happened. But then what? He runs up the hill and turns the gun on himself, and that's where they find him later. We heard high-powered rifles that day. You were with me. We heard high-powered rifles, multiple angles. We had somehow audio shooters coming in from the helicopter and the respondents on the scene. That couldn't have been nice for the sheriff and or the police department responding to that. And the photos that came out were... I think there are more federal agents in your area than there are constituents paying taxes with the photographs that we saw. Like, they came from fucking who knows where, Montana, Seattle office. There was so many of them. Like, how are there so many of you here?
That quickly with that type of response time. But
it does make sense to me. It was a shotgun. If 2 people died and that was kind of the situation, whatever the confrontation was, I don't know. And we'll never know, but yeah, you're not gonna kill 2 guys wearing what I suspect are heavy leather coats with oxygen tanks on the back and helmets, maybe they weren't in full garb or whatever, but you're still not going to kill somebody with a shotgun over 100 yards away unless you're very good at it and you got slugs and specialty set up
Right.
with intent to take down a deer or an elk with a shotgun. Yeah.
Yep.
That'd be my take on it from experience. Not experience shooting at people, but lots of experience shooting shotguns.
One of the other theories that surfaced recently is that there was this guy who a couple months prior had and he was a military guy, not technically special forces, doesn't really matter, but over in Wenatchee, and he is a divorced dad who had his 3 little girls and ended up murdering his little girls and has been on the lam ever since. And there was a lot of speculation that it was him because there had been sightings of him in that area, and that he actually killed Wes too. Wes was one of his victims, and that he was actually still on the lam.
So it was like just a full killer rampage then, and this West guy was just victim 1 of 3 in that confrontation? He was just on the
mountain.
Gotcha.
He was just on the mountain, yeah. And that this guy was the one who actually killed 3 of them, injuring a 4th, and Wes being just one of the victims. There's nothing so far to suggest that. In fact, this military guy, they have actually just reported that they saw sightings of him pretty far from here.
Sure.
So who knows? But at this point, you know, the most important thing is that the community came together. I'd like some answers. I'd like to have, you know, a motivation for it. If it was just a, you know, because the way that it's being presented is that it was an ambush, that he lit those fires to draw them in and shoot them. So it was premeditated.
Working narrative we had that day. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, was it premeditation? I don't know. Because it could have been he was just up there and lit a fire, and he was just out there like hunting grouse or something with a shotgun, accidentally lit a fire, didn't know what to do as a 20-year-old kid who works in the tree service, and panicked. It is not mentally well, you know. And 2, you know, firefighters show up and they get in a confrontation about like the amount of trouble this kid is thinking I'm going to be in, and all hell breaks loose. It could have been something as simple as that. But at this time, we don't have any information. It could have been this Travis guy who's a military guy and killed everybody. Or it could have been like a explosive accident that went way sideways. And there's a big berth in between that we could fill the Grand Canyon with unanswered.
Yeah, I mean,
you know,
while not
questions.
likely, it is certainly feasible that a hiker that stopped, or a photographer that stopped to take pictures, flicked a cigarette butt, which started the fire. And this unrelated kid with a shotgun in his truck was in the way of the fire department, and they called him a loser. And so he just snapped. And it could be that this guy that's been on the hunt, I think I know the guy you're talking about, because they've been looking for this dude for about a month now, it feels like. That's been sighted all over, from the Tri-Cities to Wenatchee to North Idaho to whatever. It could be him on a killer rampage suddenly. Hey, Cynthiana. But yeah, I absolutely don't understand the details, and that's why it's very difficult to believe what the news was pumping out moments after it was happening. So I was just like, I mean, I don't know what to believe. But no, I mean, besides potentially autopsies, no other reports have come out. I mean, you had enough federal presence there to.
Aaron,
I'm surprised that anyone was laid off from fucking Elon and Doge, considering how many feds I saw in the photographs there, right? Like, so, and with all those heads and investigations, no one's come out with anything publicly yet.
Well, Aaron went to the press releases personally, so she was there, and Bob talked to her on the side personally, and he really didn't have any significant answers for her that he could give at that point.
Yeah.
We are all, as a community, waiting for the next press release and press conference, which should be coming soon. But I think they were kind of waiting for a lot of like, first of all, they're waiting for the guy in the hospital to stabilize.
Yep.
Two, they're handling the families and the 4th of July parade and all the stuff that was going on. They're kind of waiting until that dust settles and then probably figuring out a few of the loose ends in the meantime to kind of give a really uh, like well-rounded report at the
Yeah.
end of, instead of rushing to it because the community is frothing at the mouth for answers right now.
Well, I
So,
mean, I had raised eyebrows, not just at the aforementioned, but at the fact that the 4th of July parade's like right around the corner. And if there's some nefarious actor out there and this guy was just a victim, well, then that nefarious actor could still be out there and who knows, could take on community members during a parade or something wild. So, I mean,
which was a point of concern for sure.
I'm sure. Yeah, it was more unnerving than fear, but it was like, it would be nice to have them put something out that was a little more satiating to, no, we're pretty sure we got the guy. The investigation's ongoing, that kind of stuff. But what a wild situation. And once again, your small unknown community on top of that hill makes national headlines again.
Yep. And to the point where I was getting phone calls from like my grandmother and from people from Seattle were hitting me up that hadn't hit me up in years.
Yeah.
Or like, hey man, are you okay? Your town's in the news. And I'm like, yeah, I'm in Vegas. I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm getting shot at by other folks in Las Vegas. Stress less.
Yeah.
This is just garden variety activity down in the South, Southwest. No, I sure hope, obviously that the families are going to be as okay as they can be considering this, and that the truth does come out, and that people will have a deeper understanding of whether this was just a troubled individual or if there was something greater at hand. Is the fire out?
Yes, the fire has been contained. It did take a little longer.
Is there a lot of community damage as a result of that fire, or did it burn up into the...
It burned some acreage, but I don't think any structures were damaged.
Well, that's
nobody had to get evacuated, as far as I know. But it, had a lot of friends in the community that lived within kind of the borders of what was quarantined off during that time frame. The area, and it was pretty spooky for a lot of people, especially with a lot of unknowns and a lot of rumors being thrown around the internet. And
my biological mother lives a mile from where all that happened.
Yeah. So, yeah, fortunately, both my kids were well out of the way. One of them was like up by Sandpoint, and then the other one was down in Worley at the casino. So like I had no the worries there. And then my wife was like an ambulance chaser following all of the stuff around. She was at the hospital for a while reporting, and she was driving around and going to different donation areas and going to different press releases. And so she was driving around like a crazy person.
I think we do need to get your wife a old timey press starter kit, like big camera with like the exposed bulb behind the dish flash on it, and like a fedora of some kind where it says press right here tucked in, and a pocket protector and stuff.
I think that's a great idea.
I realize times have changed and none of these tools are useful in the modern journalism era, but it'd still be fun for her to wear. You're like, dude, put it on. You're going to feel better about it. He'll talk to you. You have exclusive privileges with the press pass in your fedora.
Get her smoking cigars.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be great. I think that's a good look for her. Yeah. So that's the excitement that's been going on in our neck of the woods. I mean, we've got other stuff, but that's kind of overshadowed everything.
Obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully within the next week or so, we will hear from that. Also, an update on my car for those people who need to hear it. It is getting fixed. We still don't have it back. We probably won't have it back until the 16th, from what I understand, something like that. But uh, roughly about $5,500 worth of damage, but most of it is being covered by insurance. So we just have the deductible and I think 2 tires that we got to pay for, and then that's it. So, but yeah. So once we get it back, Oliver will spit shine that thing, and yeah,
You should
I'll
on
have
the
a vehicle
social.
again.
You should on the social media posts. You should put up a before and after the detail job. Be like penance
I,
for
I think
destroying
I
a
will.
car that I just paid off.
Yeah. So, but yeah.
I told that
So
story to my friend Curtis, and he felt the pain. He had a good laugh. He has a wife and 3 daughters, and each and every time he comes back from a work trip or something, he has to take one of their cars back to the dealership to have the rims repaired because someone slammed into a curb or whacked something or jumped over something or like. And he's like, I have to buy the warranties on everything. Like
yeah.
they just consume so much damage on vehicles. I don't know how they do it every time, but I was like, I figured you would empathize with this particular plight. He's like, I know exactly where he's at. That sucks. like, yeah, I'm
Well,
sorry, man.
well, thank you, Curtis.
Yeah.
Thanks for feeling it. Yeah. So I have a story
Yeah.
that has some pretty heavy significance,
Mm-hmm.
and um, it it may not feel significant to a lot of people, but for my community, for what I do, for the church community, and for kind of the an answer to the country's constant bickering about this particular thing. Um, Yesterday, the IRS said uh, in a court filing, and this is from the New York Times. IRS says churches can endorse candidates from the pulpit. So there's been a long-standing, misconception that churches should stay out of politics, that they have no business there because they don't pay taxes, so therefore they don't have the right to.
Separation of church and state, bro.
Right, which I dare you to find in any of the articles of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, because it doesn't exist. It's only in one letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote.
Yeah.
And when he wrote it, the meaning behind it was not to separate the church from the state, it was to protect the church from the state.
Mm-hmm.
So it was not in any way to say that they should not intertwine or intermingle. The entire country was founded on it. In fact,
Isn't it funny how distrusting the founding fathers were of the very government structures they hand built?
yeah,
There are
to the point
more
where they
letters and syllables and punctuation and loophole coverage dedicated to every one of those articles as delicately as they could craft them as they were crafting them.
yeah.
Just
So
point of order, that's all.
the thing is that when we fought the Revolutionary War,
Mm-hmm.
the Revolutionary War was only called the Revolutionary War on these shores.
Right.
In England, the king over there at the time, he actually called it the Presbyterian War.
Yeah.
And he actually did not fear the standing army or the militias. He feared the pastors.
Yep.
He called it the Presbyterian War because he feared the Black Robed Regiment, which was these pastors who stood up at their pulpits and were preaching politics and saying, we can't allow this, took off their robes and put on soldier uniforms and went out and fought and recruited men with such high levels of courage and integrity to protect their families that he feared that more than any of their standing armies. And so since its inception, every time in every portion of this country, the church has been involved in the politics in molding not only its policies, but its moral fabric, its soul. It's the reason why America is the way it is. You cannot have America without the pulpit.
I mean,
You cannot.
honestly, there's not many wars throughout recorded history that were not because of a faith violation in someone's eyes.
Right.
You know,
But we were the only country that really was built on the foundation of it. Societies were built and then injected into it were different faith structures.
yeah.
We were a society in a country that was built off of those faith structures.
I thought it was because we
So-
didn't like tea very much, or at least
That's
Boston
also-
didn't.
That's also true.
Yeah.
But yeah, the whole premise, the whole foundation of this country was built on exactly that matter. Now, for a lot of us, we knew this. So, you know,
Yep.
there's a lot of us, we knew that the IRS, that any church can, under the First Amendment and the Articles of the Constitution, there's nothing that says that just because they are taxes exempt, that they have
somehow
in any
lose
way,
exclusivity around the right to
or
assembly and free speech, right?
right, that they
Yeah.
lose their voice to their congregation, to their people in whatever manner possible, right?
Yeah.
So, and this actually only has ever applied to conservative or Christian values when it's coming from the pulpit. But if you have a lesbian preacher at a Lutheran church, she's allowed to preach all of the politics she wants to, and nobody bats an eye at it. So, like, it's only applied one side when this argument is made ever. So, that being said, the IRS itself came out and the IRS said on Monday that churches and other houses of worship can endorse political candidates to their congregations, carving out an exemption in a decades-old ban on political activity by tax-exempt nonprofits. Now, this ban was never legal. It was always an illegal ban. So the agency made the statement in a court filing intended to settle a lawsuit filed by two Texas churches and an association of Christian broadcasters. The plaintiff that sued the Internal Revenue Service had previously asked a federal court in Texas to create an even broader exemption to rule that all nonprofits, religious and secular, were free to endorse candidates to their members. That would have erased a bedrock idea of American nonprofit law that tax-exempt groups cannot be used as tools of any campaign. Instead, the IRS agreed to a narrow carve-out, one that excerpts in nonprofit law said might sharply increase politicking in churches, even though it mainly seemed to formalize what already seemed to be the agency's unspoken policy. The agency said that if a house of worship endorsed a candidate to its congregants, the IRS would view that as not a campaigning, but as a private matter, like a family discussion concerning candidates.
Well, they endorse a candidate for your soul as their principal purpose, more or less. So I don't understand why that would be any sort of difference. And it's not as though we haven't seen politicians drop into a church once in a while there's good media coverage on it during their campaign trail.
Every election cycle, our stage is always has our local candidates coming up. So, and if it's stuff that
turnabout's fair play. I mean, yeah.
I just thought it was really important because a lot of pastors hide behind that. They don't want to get involved in the culture war. They don't want to get involved in politics and they're cowards, and they don't want to lose congregants. They don't want to stand for anything. They don't want to stand on something. They just want a sweeping, very easy peace and love kind of philosophy that puts butts in seats, which brings money to the church. Now, that is kind of, in my opinion, has always been kind of a coward's way about it. Like, there are principles and standards that the Bible sets, and we are supposed to uphold those, and we are supposed to fight for them.
Well,
And if that means,
it's also kind of hard to take a pastor seriously if they have enough backbone to tell you that you'll go to hell if you don't this, that, and the other thing, but they won't endorse a candidate because of moral value. It feels like somehow you're more scared of cancellation on a societal level than you are promoting fire insurance. Like, what is the existence of your doctrine? Exactly. Yeah.
And
makes sense.
So what this does is this kind of exposes that. And so we've kind of put out a public call and said, all right, guys, the leash has been severed. You don't have an excuse anymore. Where do you stand? And I want to see in the next election cycle, I want to see who does and doesn't, who's got the chutzpah, who's actually got the conviction, who's actually got the understanding of the word that this is something that they need to engage in and need their congregants to engage in. And if you want the freedoms that you currently have and they don't get eroded away like that's been happening for the last 60, 70 years within this country, slowly but surely, to the point where you almost got outlawed during COVID, and that
several
the attack
churches
of the
did.
Christian church, that you're getting arrested for preaching the word of God, that the demonization of Christians in this country is growing. I hate to break it to you, but this is your battlefield and this is your battlefront, and you need to be the guy standing in front, and you need to lead your people to the polls. You need to lead your congregants, your sheep. You need to do that. That's your job. And if you don't, people need to find different churches, and you need to not be leading a church. You need to find a stronger shepherd. And these people need to understand that we need to be actively involved in not only our churches, but in our community and within the political structure of that. And we need to own the narrative of it. And if you don't, you're going to lose it. And you're going to be on the other side of a situation you don't want to be on.
Yeah.
And that's so I thought it was a pretty important story. I think that it's pretty incredible that the New York Times was the one that I saw this on. It was also on the Hill. It was also on the Hill.
Yeah.
So, that way people don't think it's just a odd framing of a story, like the Gateway pundit framed it weirdly or whatever. This is coming from the Hill and from the New York Times. So it is the law of the land. Churches can endorse political policy, and they can endorse candidates from the pulpit. So
yeah, I don't
want to hear any more about it.
I think the IRS has plenty of reasons to be soft-handed in their approach to pretty much anything these days, with so much of their existence under fire by the current administration. So
yeah, they're like, hey,
no, it's totally fine.
Goes,
that never really was a rule. It was just a rule when everyone thought it was.
Yeah.
But now that everyone doesn't like us very much, you can do whatever the hell you want. Just gonna put that out there.
Yeah, the looming threat of this administration in half the country going, abolish the IRS. They're like,
it's kind of odd.
We could be friends.
Funny timing, no? Just found that to be interesting as well.
And you know what? Good for them. Leverage it. Leverage that fear. I have no problem with leveraging fear on the IRS at all. So
yeah, they definitely have leveraged fear against the taxpayer for their entire existence. So, jeez,
very true. Yeah, absolutely.
Man, so
do you have
we got some conspiracy corner stuff. It looks like a doubleheader.
Yes,
it looks like a
doubleheader. Yeah, so I'm gonna get my cozy hat on.
You sure?
Oh. Because
I'm gonna put mine here for as long as I can take it.
Okay, yeah, you're living in an oven.
I'm already, yeah. Like, where you live at? What's that like in the summertime? It's like, have you ever been cremated?
Yeah.
'Cause it
Your
feels like that.
your brain will turn into like a Jiffy Pop popcorn
Yeah.
situation with that on your head. I see.
Just slowly doze off while we're live and can't shut the stream down. So we got a couple. You want to start with Texas or you want to start with Jeffrey Epstein?
Let's do Epstein.
Epstein.
Because yeah, this obviously rocked every community. Very interesting because I think this might be the unifier of the party unifier. I think that Democrats, Republicans, conservatives, liberals, and everybody and anybody in between are all looking at each other going, that ain't right. Something ain't right. So
I would imagine, because we were told by lots of different people that there were Epstein files and that they were coming out, right? And that's sort of what this is about. We are waiting to find out what's in these Epstein files. And
people are in jail for it.
I think if nothing happened and nothing was released, then why is Ghislaine Maxwell serving a sentence? What was Jeffrey Epstein charged with when he was picked up, right? Well, we know that. So now let's get to the evidence that several different agency heads said A existed and B was forthcoming.
And was on their desk.
So it's not a surprise to me that there are going to be political figures that are prominent and active that are going to be implicated in these files. But I don't think it's exclusive to party lines. I think this is going to be a massive eyesore on lots of people in power and not just in political positions of authority. I think it's going to be business heads. It's going to be people you probably know, people that you looked up to. And I think we need a palate cleanser. I think something needs to come out. Like, I personally have been banging the drum on all of this shit that we talk about on this podcast for 3.5 years now that we get zero follow-up on. You know, alien stuff in Congress and shit, this missing persons deal and you know, this, that, and the other thing. And like, we're going to get Diddy getting acquitted of absolutely everything in the sex trafficking thing long before we figure out what was declassified in the JFK stuff, long before we figure out intimate details about any black projects that are off the books for alien stuff. And certainly this Jeffrey Epstein shit. And I'm like kind of furious about it that we finally have enough truth seekers that seem to be highly motivated and interested and already promised the American people and the world at large that these Epstein files were going to come out, and suddenly everything's redacted. No one can find shit. There's nothing in them. Now they're just gone. Last information I heard is what Epstein file? And of course, every single person I talk to is sending me Donald Trump stuff. All of them. Like, scared much that something's going to come out? And it's like, look, I addressed it on the pod. I think you did too, a month or so ago. Like, it is well documented that those two knew each other before his 2016 run. Like, everybody knew this all throughout when that was getting thrown up. But whether he was up to nefarious shit or not, I mean, I don't know. I don't think anyone really knows. And it would be interesting to see if he is or is not exempt from that. But I wouldn't be surprised if Donald Trump is lingering name is painting the walls of the Epstein files and whatever carcass of information there appears to be in there. But now we're being told to just fucking drop it. And this one hits home. I'm kind of pissed. Like, I don't give a shit who's in it. I want it to come out so that we all have a deep understanding of this regardless. Cause I think we're going to see some Clinton stuff in there, probably on both sides, the Hillary stuff and the Bill stuff.
For sure.
I think let's not stop on the Bill train. All aboard. I think we're going to hear about Bill Gates in there. I think we're going to hear about all kinds of stuff that people may or may not be ready to hear. But I, for one, have been eagerly waiting this since pre-election times. And it appears we're not going to get any information again. Yeah. So I'm pissed. That's the state I'm in. I'm just pissed. Like, really?
Well,
again?
there's a lot of, there's obviously a lot of, no one believes it. And I haven't seen a single side of Twitter or otherwise that there's a single group that's like believes the narrative that's coming out right now. So, but then it goes to, well, why? Why are they saying this now? Obviously, you got all the people who are like, well, Trump's got to be on it. And I was like, well, I don't think that's the case. And the reason why I say that is because he wouldn't have been promoting it, A. But B, Biden had it for 4 years. He had that list.
Right.
They would have used it like a cannon against him.
We talked about that. Like, there's photos of them together and stuff, like, obviously well documented. Donald Trump knew Jeffrey Epstein, but but
they disbanded their friendship in the 90s.
That was the point we had, was like, if the opposition had this document or set of documents for years, why didn't they use that as the hangman's noose,
big gun?
Right? Yeah, exactly right. So I think everybody's going to be implicated in this. I need to see it.
And even now, like, there are people who are still within the power structures, or even just outside of them that used to be in the power structures, that have seen this.
So hot.
That have seen this list.
Yeah.
And would be like, now, even with him in the presidency now, they go, hey, you know what? That guy, he's on the list and I have proof. Like, if he was on that list, everyone would know about it. No one would be able to keep, all the haters of President Trump would not be able to keep it a secret.
Right.
I mean, half or more of the FBI was weaponized against him for the better part of 8 years. So, like, you would think that,
you don't think Peter Strzok would have put that in there if he was gonna
making up Russiagate stories,
save
or like,
America from this man,
that he peed on a hooker in Russia or some nonsense, like like they were coming up with those kind of stories. Like, there was peace stories about him. Do you think that for a minute, like, that they wouldn't have used the real story of him being involved with Jeffrey Epstein?
I think you could go back even further. I think that surely when the Stormy Daniels stuff was popping up, that we would have had, well, pour it on, because over here on the Epstein side of things, there's all this nefarious activity with multiple women or girls or under it, like, who the fuck knows, but they would have used it then, presumably, right? Like, so yeah, I'm kind of with you there. Like, certainly he will be in it,
but it still
certainly there are photos of them together. But I'm not let's forget Donald Trump as the president of the United States for just a second.
What is the real motivator? Yeah,
why not everybody else? Like, what?
Yeah,
I mean, what he was accused of and arrested for was horrifying, horrifying to do to human beings.
Here's my theory on what the motivator is behind this. And it's that they have come to the realization that if this gets exposed, it's not just, like you said before, a palate cleanser. It's not just a shift or a big bump in the road, that it's cataclysmic, that it will upend the structures,
foundational destruction.
Of world governments, of world monetary systems, of, like, it is so prolifically over the top of what the information is in this, that if they expose it or release it, that its implications will actually crumble society. And that's what I'm wondering if that's because I can't think of any other reason. There's also, the speculation that there's, on a lesser scale, that the CIA, being heavily involved with him, does not want to be exposed. I don't really care. Or that there's, like, some type of Mossad Israel connection. I don't think that's a thing. I think that that's hopeful thinking by certain groups.
I think if Jeffrey Epstein was a tool for the intelligence community, using his ways and practices kind of as a third-party asset that they could deploy for leverage against world leaders, it would not surprise me one bit if every country was implicated, including Israel, in this. I do want to disagree with you from a completely cynical perspective, and I hope in this disagreement that I'm dead wrong. I don't think it's going to shake the foundation of shit.
No.
I think people will be like in one ear and out the other. We'll get some top tier internet memes out of whatever comes out of that. I think that those that are destructive and in places of power will name their successor or remain where they're at. I've seen this with financial collapses. I've seen this with bailouts. I've seen this with stuff that's like, how on earth could we let this person remain in politics today after they've been clearly implicated in all this stuff that they never go to trial for? And I want to be wrong. I want it to shake up enough things if it is that big that, but criminal or otherwise, don't you think for the safety of and security of our country and in her interests, they would simply put it back under some sort of protective clause within the government and say that this is tied up in some sort of national security shit and that's why we can't release it? Something has to
Not
be.
just it didn't exist.
That's the point. And like, I don't think people are going to be upside down in this as much as they should be. Like I would be. I'm sure there's a modicum of people like me that still believe there's right and wrong. But I think at large, it may not be as big a splash, even if it was World Bank destroying information because of sex trading and human trafficking and the people involved.
So then why would somebody like Cash Patel, Dan Bongino, and Pam Bondi, and by proxy the Trump administration, then why would they reverse track so much that they know that everybody's doesn't believe them? They know that the entire world doesn't believe them. So why would they reverse so dramatically instead of saying, oh man, they were destroyed, to say that they never existed and that he killed himself and we have video footage, which by the way is missing a full minute out of it. Why is there even that weirdly of a turnaround where they're like, it's almost like they're failing at doing a Jedi mind trick, like a Jedi that can't do it, you know, like there was no Epstein file, he killed himself. And everyone's
and
like,
why is his wife
like,
in jail for excruciating charges as well? Like, should she then not just be released with a national apology and compensation?
I don't think it was his wife, but yeah, like,
or what, associate, whatever, an innocent person.
Yeah. If she's innocent, then why is she in there? If there was no list, if there was no crime, I mean, we all, you know, for years now have said like, how is she even in jail if no one's been arrested for being a client?
Right.
Like, it doesn't make any sense to begin with. But if she's still in jail and they're now denying that there was even a client list at all, how she shouldn't be in jail. And I'm not a defender of Ghislaine Maxwell. I don't think that I think she's every bit as evil as we think she is. And I think that's same with Jeffrey Epstein.
I would love to believe one way or the other, but I need to see the case files. You know,
you're making a weird argument for us to defend Ghislaine Maxwell.
There's blood on the walls in the caverns of history of my own personal life, much of which I've been held account for, and there were no secret files or magic wands I could wave to not be held accountable for my life choices. You know, and while I wouldn't want that celebrated, it needed to come out and I had to deal with it, like all those things, right? And it was nothing nefarious like human trafficking and shit. But at the same time, like, we've got to get this information. How can we just say for years that this stuff exists, have all this shit go down? Did he kill himself? Did he not? Ghislaine and all that stuff, all of the crazy like people associated to the compound that were coming out with their stories and a whole bunch of stuff, and then them saying we have a trove of documentation and information on this, whether it implicates the intelligence community or the government or the people in power or whatever, and then just be like, nothing to see here. Shazah. They're like the Foot Clan. They just throw a smoke bomb and they're gone and everyone's coughing and like, I don't buy any of this shit.
No,
personally.
And I don't think we're anywhere near alone on that. To my earlier point, I think that this is oddly the thing that has united the country is that we all kind of
It should.
all the blue and green and pink haired people are looking at all the dudes wearing camo in the woods, and they're all going, "You don't believe this, do you?" And they go, do you? Nope. All right, we're on the same page here. Like,
Yeah.
everybody is on the same page. It's like, this is nonsense. And I can't imagine that guys like Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, who had stellar reputations up until this point, stellar reputations, to the point we were cheering that they were the ones that were being put into those positions.
Mm-hmm.
Pam Bondi was not so much, but those two gentlemen in particular, I can't imagine that they think that the general populace, or even just their fan base, the people that support them, are dumb enough to believe this. They know that they're not. So either they're going, "Oh man, I can't wait till the big reveal. We're going to look like idiots for a while this plays out in the public sphere, but we have to do it by this angle for this other thing that no one can see except for us. And by the end of it, we'll jump out and go, surprise, we actually did this because of this whole reason. Sorry we had to do it that way, but here it is." Or they got flipped and are completely compromised evil bastards now. And I don't want to believe that, but at the same time, like, you cannot come out with this information the way that they did it,
Yeah.
and not have it be one of those two things. Either we are being it's so obvious derailment from the story with no explanation as to why. They're just like, "Yep, no, just nothing to see here, no big deal." Even though a couple weeks ago we were teasing that all of the information was going to come out, and that's all we ran on, was basically releasing this information. For them to do such an about face with kind of like not even a shrugging of the shoulders, like, "Oh, sorry."
No reason,
like,
either. So your ultimate position sounds like it's big enough and likely world shattering enough that it's being held for some type of reason, and the reason that's most probable is because it's so bad they can't even control the narrative around it if it was released. Like, well, we did it because of this, or take a look at this through line, and this is why we're gonna. Like, do you think it's really that bad that they're just like burning papers and behind the White House in a campfire?
Well, not necessarily that. I'm just saying that they probably realize the economic implications of it,
Mm-hmm.
and they know that in order to win the midterms, to continue with the projection and trajectory of what this administration wants to do with the border and with a bunch of other things, that it will ultimately hurt that if they release it now, and they have to do it systematically, or they are actually using it instead of releasing it to the public. They decided, actually, and it's the ring of power,
Right.
And they're like, actually, I'm going to use it, and we're actually going to use it as weaponization of information that we have now against world leaders, and kind of start steering the ship, because now we're the ones in control of all the information. If the public has it, then the public
will reach their own conclusion, and that's not what they want.
But if we have it, we pull the puppet strings now, and we can say, you go here, you do that, you're not going to do that, you're not going to do that. And if they've got the control over it, like the One Ring, they kind of control the storyline. And
well, where's the Julian Assanges and the Edward Snowdens of our generation?
Yeah, I wish that. I mean, we're going to have a new one. There's going to be a new guy who pops up out of nowhere and becomes the new Snowden.
I mean, if it's as bad as it's been speculated to be, I think it's bound to happen, again, and probably worth it. But yeah, that's sad.
Agreed.
I think I'm most pissed that it's going to be yet another unresolved story head. Like, yet again, there's like probably some groundbreaking information that will set a few minds at ease and enrage others, or whatever. Aliens, Diddy, Epstein, Britney, anything you could think of, and it's like
Yeah.
JFK files, all this stuff, and we're getting the magic trick once again. It sucks. It pisses me off.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's where we're headed with this. I wish it wasn't the case, but
Sag. Meanwhile, in Texas.
Meanwhile, in Texas. And before we get into this, I don't want anyone to think that we're taking this story lightly by wearing tinfoiled hats and trying to come up with weird, fun stories around it, because that's not at all what we're doing here. It was a huge tragedy. A lot of people, a lot of good people. I've heard many harrowing stories coming out of Texas and the flash flooding that happened this last week. A lot of young girls and families got swept away in something that was a natural disaster that happened so quickly that people did not have time to respond to it. And I don't want anyone to think that we're taking that lightly.
Yeah, we're not going to take the piss on a national tragedy.
No. But that being said, the reason I'm keeping this hat on is because although I'm familiar with the idea that in Texas, due to the dryness of the ground, that flooding and flash flooding, much like in Nevada.
I was going to say, I have some insight on this.
Yeah, it's fairly common.
It happens so fast.
Yeah.
And it is so radical that, like, one of the runoffs in the casinos in Las Vegas is right in the prime runoff zone. And so their entire subterranean, it's the link, LINQ, the entire subterranean parking structure is the principal runoff from the valley down there. And it routinely washes cars out of it because it's a river at the end of a extreme rainfall. It happens so fast. Yeah.
Right. So it's not to say that I'm like reaching for this, but lately, scrolling through Instagram and stuff, I have been, you get your little clips of different like podcasts and everything depending on your algorithm, and I get a lot of Sean Ryan clips. And you're a frequent watcher of Sean Ryan, so and one guest that he's had on that's kind of caught my attention, and I haven't really like invested any time or effort into finding out who this guy was. It was just because of his look and what he was talking about that kind of like caught my eye, and I was like, oh, this is weird. And it's this guy, and he's looks to be in his mid-20s, and he's got the craziest party mullet, like full-on blonde kid with like a glorious locks going behind his head, and he's talking on an educated level about weather structures and weather systems and technology, and basically weather modification, and that he's at the forefront of the science of it and understands it to such a level that it's kind of blowing Sean's mind, and he's very, very articulate about it. He understands, and you can tell there's a confidence there that this kid wasn't faking it. But I didn't know who he was, and I didn't ever question it. I was just like, this kid with a mullet that looks like a frat boy seems to have the insight here. And he'll talk everything about weather modification to cloud seeding and even to chemtrails. And so, and separating them as rightly he should, because they are very different things. But he turns out, because I saw this news pop by my feed, this article come by, and it said, confirmed CEO of weather modification company reveals cloud seeding operations were conducted in Texas just 2 days before the deadly flood. And there's a video here, and I have yet to watch the video, but the kid in the picture is the same kid from the Sean Ryan show. And so it turns out this kid his name is Augustus Dorico. And he is the founder and CEO and head of engineering at Rainmaker Technology Corporation, and has been instrumental in developing solutions that bridge the gap between traditional industries and modern technology. His passion for leveraging technology to solve real-world problems has garnered attention with the entrepreneurial community. This is what he does. He's a rainmaker. And so when communities or crops or areas need cloud seeding done, or weather modification of any kind, he's at the forefront of a large group of companies that do this. Now, up until 4 or 5 years ago, this was a conspiracy theory, and in fact, it's a hot one here in Idaho, because Idaho is actually one of the states that allows it, and there's only a few left. Idaho is still one of them. Now, a lot of this stuff is done on, like Florida and I think Tennessee have both recently passed state legislation to say that this is illegal now. So cloud seeding, weather modification, and
Florida doesn't need any help in the weather department as far as extreme weather. Yeah.
So, but they all passed state legislation, which by and large is symbolic at best, because really most of this stuff happens above the airspace that is state controlled and it's FAA controlled. It's a federally controlled airspace. So they don't really have to abide by anything that the state actually says. It is symbolic. It is on record. And if it does go to Washington, D.C. and a federal level, at least these states will be on record saying that we've already banned this and we want it banned on a federal level. Now, as far as the science goes of I understand the altruistic concept of, hey, we have droughts. It'd be nice if we could play with the weather, which they've been doing since the 50s. So this is something that, if you look into the science of it, this is something that they've been working in. It started actually in New York, where they've been cloud seeding. Seattle does it too, oddly. It's actually at the top of the Columbia building. I watched it one day, actually spitting clouds. And it's known to be there. It's not like I just went, that must be one. It's actually known as a cloud seeder. Why they have one in Seattle is beyond me. But this started in
another
New York.
State that doesn't need help in that department.
Right.
Yeah. Well, at least that side of the state
is where it originated, and but it has been heavily developed over the years, and they actually will work on doing weather modification to bring rain in drought areas or snowpack in areas that need it, or these type of things. And I actually have a theory that I remember as a kid, when you watched the weather, dads would always make the joke of, it's the only job in the world where you can keep your job when you're wrong 70+% of the time.
Meteorology.
Yeah. Like when I was a kid, that was the joke. It's like the weatherman's never right. And it was always just a guesswork. Basically, it looks like clouds are coming this way,
How did that comedian put it? The easiest job in the world is the weather guy in San Diego. What's it going to be like, Ted? Nice. Back to you.
And but like nowadays, you can get up to the hour predictive weather 2 weeks ahead.
Well, you mentioned this. You mentioned this a year ago. We were talking about when I got what I thought was EMP'd by the electrostatic aurora borealis shit that happened last summer.
Yeah.
And you're like, how can we suddenly predict where viewing areas for the aurora borealis when we have historically never been able to do that? And I was like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but even now, I mean, think about it. We just go to the weather app on our phone.
Yeah.
To whatever area of the country we want to go to. Oh, I'm going to be in Tulsa in October. So like or not October, but like in a couple weeks, like what does it look like in Tulsa in a couple
Well,
weeks?
shit, you can even Google that. Like,
week,
what's the easiest time to visit Argentina, right? Oh, well, the weather's typically, whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
But like they'll give you hour by hour
Sure.
a week
I know
or
what you
two
mean,
in
though.
advance.
Like the 10-day forecast is
So,
about as good as you're going to get. Yeah.
yeah. And it pretty much is on point every time now, with the rare exception. So, but now, so I don't think the technology got any better. I think they're just, I joke that I don't think it's like Doppler didn't get any better.
Right.
Basically, it's the same instruments, but now they just go, oh, we're going to be making sure that it's going to be raining in that point, So, but, and I'm being hyperbolic, obviously, about that. But in this particular case, like the weather modification has become such a hot button issue because in the grander scheme of things, like we think that we can isolate, and like this gentleman here, and I'm sure that these scientists have a far more fine-tuned understanding of it. But in my kind of perspective of how I look at this, it's like you can't modify the weather in one place and not have it affect the world, much like a butterfly effect type of situation where you're going to put different types of cooling fronts or heating fronts or wind or whatever the case may be in this area, but that's going to then affect, even on a minor scale, outwardly. Like if you put a rain system on the coast of the Gulf Coast of Texas, it's going to create a front that hits that, and depending on it where the mountains are, or if there's oceans that have a different storm coming in with different, that's why you're getting hurricanes that people have
so you're saying
the
random effect of what you're doing is unknown, but it is not non-existent. Like at some point you are noodling around with stuff that you can't control the consequences of. I'm curious.
Yeah, even if you think that it's isolated to just this region, it's not, because other storm fronts, other warm fronts and cool fronts and different types of weather are going to be slapping up against that and ricocheting off of it in essence, and going even slightly over here, but then it'll hit something that was supposed to go this way, and now you got a hurricane because a cold front and a warm front just hit each other. And you created that cold front because you created this rainstorm over here that the wind brought it that way, or whatever the case may be. And I'm sure it's far more fine-tuned than that, but I think that's why we're having the increase of tornadoes, the increase of hurricanes, all of that kind of stuff. And that maybe even furthermore, our global warming or climate change thing is actually man-made, but not in the way that they were telling us.
Well, and there's a lot of bullshit to weed through with what we just covered here, right?
Because I put a lot on the table. I'm sorry.
No, but instantly, like, the politicians in Washington State, show extreme photos of the flood raging through Texas on their X and their Instagram, and said, serves you right, climate change deniers, blah, blah, blah. This is what you get. Donald Trump made the rain come, right? Because no good news does not have that man's name attached to it. So let's weed through even that bullshit. I want to know if the guy that's the CEO of the business said that on Sean Ryan or something. Could
Augustus
then be held criminally accountable for the deaths that may have been caused by this? I mean, there's no way to prove that. How can you, it's not like they're going to find DNA of which cloud actually fucking killed these people. And there's no criminal precedent for this. But like, do you think there will be, especially if states are filing like not in my state types of legislation that is now going up?
Well, let me tell you what he said.
Yeah.
The CEO of Weather Modification Technology Company has confirmed that cloud seeding operations took place in Texas just 2 days before the deadly Central Texas flood occurred. NBC News reported that Augustus Dorinko, the CEO of Rainmaker, a weather modification company, said that planes had released silver iodide in the atmosphere in Texas 2 days prior to the fatal floods that have claimed over 100 lives. Drinko claims the cloud seeding operations did not cause the flooding in Texas. And
because he claims it didn't?
Right. So NBC News, yeah, and there's a little video here. According to Dorinko, Rainmaker flew a brief 20-minute cloud seeding mission in south central Texas last Tuesday, but suspended all operations that same day due to abnormally high moisture content in the air. The two clouds seeded during the Tuesday flight would have been dissipated after a few hours and would have had no effect on the flood several days later,
Oh,
he added.
Surely not our clouds.
Yeah. Yeah, our clouds did not do
What?
this.
Like,
Cloud seeding involves using chemicals, often particulates of silver iodide, to trigger the formation of ice crystals and droplets from the water that's already present in a cloud, but not being efficiently turned into rain. Through the technique has been studied for decades, it remains difficult to predict the additional rainfall that cloud seeding operations can generate, with estimates ranging widely from 0 to 20%. What's clear is that the technique would not have been able to generate the record-breaking rainfall seen in Texas. So much rain fell that the Guadalupe River at Kerrville, one of the epicenters of the flood, rose some 26 feet in less than an hour overnight on Friday. So yeah, they're claiming, yeah, we were there, yeah, we did it, but it wasn't us. And so
surely it wasn't the Wayland Industries clouds. It was the normal ones. Yeah, like
he was jumping out in front of this for exactly what you were saying, is that he knows that on paper they were there, that they were doing.
I'm categorically not allowed to follow the science anymore. I'm just not. I don't trust this guy at all.
Right? And so this guy like jumped out in front of a camera and made a bunch of comments to say, hey, yeah, we were there, but we didn't do enough to cause this. It wasn't us. So because of exactly what you're saying, lawsuits, he doesn't want to be responsible for all the deaths.
Right.
And so, but who contracted him to be there?
Right.
Why was he there cloud seeding to begin with? The article doesn't say.
I was going to say, you're not going to find that in the article.
Right.
I promise
so
you that.
Like, he's not just out there doing it on his own. He's not allowed to. He has to be contracted by some type of government agency to be able to do that. Like, you don't get to just fly around making clouds without the go ahead. That's
a huge win for the chemtrails guys right now. Yeah. And I was going to say, we have a problem with water levels right now in the Colorado River on my side of it. But if they put clouds up there with airplanes, it's going to flood the whole valley. I don't know how to take this story because I got all kinds of feelings on this. They should stop. I think we'll just leave nature alone.
I think this falls directly and squarely into the idea that a lot of people have problems with, called you're playing God. And there's a reason why you shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, I'll jump into the deep end of this particular conspiracy theory segment and buy all the stock that there is eligible to buy on the side of the case that this this is artificially produced, and this is what the climate change people are all wrong about.
Yeah,
because if this is actually happening enough where there's legislation being passed in certain states and stuff like that, kind of hard. It was kind of hard for me to buy into the, like, yes, I believe that the climate is changing, but to the degree of we're all doomed in 18 minutes that I'm being fed, I just don't buy into. Because I always kind of shrug and went, if the planet could shake the dinosaurs off for an age, I mean, we're like a flea on a gorilla's back as a species. So, like, what if we get hit by a meteor? What's que sera?
Well, I mean, obviously, we've had the blueprint over and over again, reinvented over and over again of the world.
Yeah, each doomsday scenario is so radically different from the last one along the same narrative lines. It's hard to follow their logic anyway.
All of our coastlines should be underwater. Every single one of our coastlines by this point.
I should have beachfront property.
and that the polar ice caps were supposed to be melted by, and they're growing. In fact, Joe Rogan just spanked Bernie Sanders on his show.
Yeah, I saw those
saying
clips.
that. Yeah, that we're actually in a cooling phase, not a warming phase. We're not globally warming, we're globally cooling. So, but that being said, all of the predictors never happened. But now instead they've shifted the goalposts and they're just pointing at natural disasters. They're pointing at hurricanes, they're pointing at tornadoes, they're pointing at earthquakes, they're pointing at all of the natural disasters and going, see climate change. When in fact, it might be weather modification that is man-made that is causing these disasters, and that makes more sense.
Strongly agree.
That way more sense to me. So
I buy that more than I buy Hollow Earth in Antarctica. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's a pretty low bar, though.
You know.
So
is
yeah,
it though?
But yeah, so the tragedy being is that about 100 people died in these floods. And I would love the idea that I don't know if love the idea is the correct phraseology for this. I think that if somebody was actually culpable for this, that we need to actually start taking action on
make
that
an
and
example of this and say this is likely a very bad idea.
Yeah, and use this this tragedy in a way for good and say, look, we can't do this. People die because you guys are dicking around in the sky and doing things that you were doing in secret for years because you knew that we would all be pissed about it, because you don't know what you're doing and you cannot control these things. Like it is consistently goes back to the Jurassic Park quote: just because you can doesn't mean you should.
You should, right?
Yeah, and we tend to meddle when we shouldn't be meddling. And
for the record, I'm not a big fan of any of that. Like I'm not a big fan of cloning. I'm not a big fan of weather seeding. I'm not a big fan of, remote viewing, experimental science and pseudoscience that's being heavily funded in certain areas, more Sean Ryan content. But I just think maybe we should not focus on those things and spend our time and efforts elsewhere. Because how could you say that and then play it off like it's an extreme coincidence? Because, we didn't have enough chemicals to create the amount of rain that Texas saw and all those people died, but it wasn't us. And then slowly back into the hedges.
And to me, that is the biggest flaw of the science community. It's, they laud themselves with being the forefront of intelligence. Of the science community can do no wrong because these are the pioneers of thought. These are the pioneers of moral ambiguity, because ultimately their intentions are good. So they are trying to do good things for humanity by way of science, and that we should just kind of accept and allow that due to this moral ambiguity on their part. But science is really, what it has in intelligence, and I'm putting that in quotations, it heavily, heavily lacks in wisdom. And wisdom is completely removed from science. And it's become the biggest problem for science is its lack of wisdom. And that's why people tend to push it away, because we see the long-term effects of pharmaceutical science, or
that's
see the
all
long-term
we've
effects
seen,
of,
dude. I mean, while we're in the tinfoil hat segment, let's put it on the table. We saw egregious Geneva Convention style violations with chemical weapons development in the late 20th century. We've seen, as well as nuclear power, which was unbelievable for humankind to wield that level of destruction. We've seen dire wolves. We've seen cloud seeding. We've seen what I'm not wish I was joking. Wuhan, a small lab in Wuhan, China, made
light difference on humankind over the last 4 or 5 years. Like,
science has replaced wisdom with arrogance.
right. Like maybe we pump the brakes. That, yeah, that's where I'm at. Like,
I'm at that too. Like, yeah. We need to learn how to navigate and manage the level of technology that we are currently sitting in for 2 to 3 decades before we even start to crawl into the next level. AI is proving that. And we are in a very, very, very precarious position globally, in many fronts of science, because they are recklessly like launching themselves and the rest of us right behind them, because we all get to come along for the ride, into areas of understanding they know not. And they do not care to tiptoe towards it. They go like a rocket towards it, and we don't have a choice in the matter as society. So yeah, no, I think we need to put a moratorium on science and put a pause on things so that we can learn how to control and navigate and understand completely the stuff that we already currently have.
Frankly,
and maybe even pull some of it back.
Frankly, that's kind of what a lot of these regulatory bodies were conceived for in places like the United States Congress and stuff, right? Like in certain areas, we have to keep up with security interests and develop these programs because we know for a fact other countries are developing these programs and this and that. But like when you get to dire wolves and super soldiers, vampires and aliens and shit, it's kind of like, well, perhaps maybe we put some guardrails around where this funding goes, and create oversight where people maybe actually peek behind the curtain quarterly and comb through it with other industry experts that kind of gauge whether or not you're really running off the rails. MK Ultra comes to mind. Like, like we did kind of morally check and balance this, and it still failed miserably because the people in charge didn't understand and recklessly signed away a bunch of money and kind of pushed it off to the side and went, I don't know. Their charter was good enough to be passed. So there it is. And I'm not saying all of it's just military and weapons science, but like as a whole, we did try that and it didn't work, at least to some degree. I'm with you. I just don't know how practically that would work in today's day and age, because I don't think a lot of these people care.
Well, I honestly,
certainly not around the COVID stuff.
It's not something that I think is even possible. I don't think you can put that genie back in the bottle.
Sure.
You can't unring that bell. It's already, the train's left the station, whatever euphemism you want to use.
Right.
We're not reversing this train. It's only going to go forward, and it's only going to get worse because you have a bunch of reckless people within that community that are trying to make their mark rather than think about the wisdom of whether or not it is morally right or wrong.
It's hard to take a hard line in the sand on, because I'm a massive fan of the technological breakthroughs in certain areas that have come from developmental sciences, specifically around space exploration and things like that. It's like sick. That said, if 3 months from now I wake up and I'm like, is that a black hole that I can just see over the house because someone
oops,
like, that's the type of stuff where you're like, maybe
CERN, HARP, all of those other institutions that
when the premise of your test is to develop the God particle, you got to take a step down from that arrogance a little bit, maybe socialize what you're up to and see if a lot of people are like, maybe we pump the brakes on.
The people who are kind of running these operations are, they're not doing it by way of curiosity.
Right.
This isn't curious scientists trying to figure out the world around them. There's intention behind that kind of play, that type of scientific play and manipulation. And so, this could go dark and deep, and I'm not going to go there right now. But
that's why we put the tinfoil hats on for this segment, right? Like we have a little confines and freedoms in the way we explore these topics, but it's hard to say I'm a fan of penicillin on one hand and then simultaneously shit on the fact that we're seeding clouds because one could lead to some sort of the propagation of some sort of element of control. But in that arena, I would rather stand down. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
In that
absolutely.
space, perhaps we don't even noodle around with something that could even passively be the cause of lives lost in Central Texas. Like, enough. You know
Or
what I
in
mean?
Central Texas, or in North Carolina,
Or you're right. I'm
or
just, as this
in
is the
Florida,
example of the
the
day, but yeah.
hurricanes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, but yeah, so that's conspiracy corner for this week.
Jeez.
It was a wild ride on both of those, because the Epstein stuff is a blender of the mind, and so is the tragedy in Texas. And
Yeah.
so but I do find it interesting that this guy jumped out in front of this story to CYA and
Yeah.
and go, yeah, we were there
Mhm.
before you guys follow that trail, because somebody's gonna follow that trail, and he knew it. And so he jumped out in front and went, yes, we were there, but it wasn't us. Those two clouds that we put out there, that didn't cause this. Little suspicious to me, but yeah, that's why I have this hat on.
Yeah,
So.
and it's been a while. I mean, we had Chinese weather balloons floating over the country a couple of years ago too.
Right?
Like,
What was that about? Like, we never got answers
did we
on
get
those
answers
either.
there? Oh, that's right. We didn't, it's just magically we moved on and it sucks. Yeah. Anyway,
You want to do some lighter stuff?
yeah, I was supposed to go see the Formula One movie with my neighbor and I didn't get a chance to go. I'm probably going to tomorrow or Thursday, depending on his schedule, because I'm on vacation and he's not. So I was hoping to have that accomplished before this podcast, but I did watch Old Guard 2.
Yeah.
And you watched it too. That was on your movie review list. What did you think about it?
I was going to ask you the same thing. I was going to see where you landed on this one.
I called tails. It was heads. I'm going to defend on this one. You can have the ball.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was a real big fan of Old Guard 1. And for anybody who is unfamiliar with this now franchise, Old Guard 1 came out a couple years ago, and it starred Charlize Theron and a cast of characters who are an elite fighting force that are immortals.
Yeah.
So they're like a basically a special like a spec ops team, but you find out that they're hundreds if not thousands of years old, and each one of them varying, and they're it's a group of like 4 of them, and they are very close knit. They've lived together for years and years, and she seems to be kind of burnt out, but the emergence of a new immortal that they didn't realize, but they all dream about each other, and it doesn't really give initially any real history as to why they're immortal or where they came from. They don't even really know, but it kind of has a Highlander feel to it, mixed with and it's based off of a comic book, a Greg Rucka comic book. So but it was fun. The first one was fun. I really enjoyed it. And I really, really loved the cast. I loved the storyline, the way that it ended. Everything was really cool. They left things open for the possibility of a sequel.
Anytime a new concept that's kind of a cool original idea is brought forward on screen, it's always the most fun because you're experiencing it all together for the first time, and either you're buying in or you're not. But it's the most fun because there's a ton of unexpected stuff that is like, oh, what a sick idea. I'm surprised they greenlit something like this from such an obscure comic series, but it was really, really good. Yeah.
Yeah. Super enjoyed it, and was actually very happy to hear that the second one was coming out, and anticipated it quite a bit.
Yeah, me too.
So it comes out a couple of days ago, and I immediately jumped on it. I was like, oh yeah,
so did I.
This is going to be great. So, and it starts off basically where the last one left off, and in fact kind of dips into the first one a little bit in some of the storytelling, and this one I want to give it another watch because I felt as if it kind of drug out in certain areas,
Mm-hmm.
but I still had fun with it. But I felt like we were playing into character development a little too much. Some of the characters didn't feel like their motivations were proper or explained right. Like you felt like
Yeah.
there's one character that resurfaces from 500 years of being trapped,
Mm-hmm.
and she's mad, but I don't think that she's mad for the right reasons, and I don't buy that she was. And I think that it would be really easy to explain. Hey, you have no. We looked for you, like, but they
Right.
don't ever explain it. And so, like, the writing just seemed a little sloppier on this one. But by the end of it, I was like, it obviously opened up for a third part. And the third part, like, could go very John Wicky,
Yeah.
or it could go in like I'm having a hard time kind of seeing. It's almost like the third movie with the Hobbit movies, where they stretched the shortest book into 3 films and added a bunch of stuff to it. By the time you get done with the second movie, you're like, all they have left is the big battle at the end with the dragon. It's the whole 2-hour movie just going to be a big battle with the dragon, and that's kind of how it feels. It's like they brought you to a point where there has to be a final battle and like 1 or 2 answers to questions that they left, and then that's about it. So whatever else that they can flesh out into that is going to be a surprise. So I'm kind of looking forward to it, but I liked this one less than I liked the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they introduced some new characters, which I thought were good and fun, but it felt like a filler episode,
Mm-hmm.
and I probably would give it, the first one probably gave it a solid 8
Yeah.
megs,
Yeah.
and this one I'd probably give about 6 megs.
Yeah.
With a 6 megs. So that's kind of how I felt about it.
I'm gonna have to get off the train a little earlier. I'm a couple stations back. Yeah, this is 4 meg territory for me. I was pissed. So we got some plot point answers to questions that we left off on. That was a positive. We got a second movie overall, which Netflix typically doesn't have the balls to do. That's a positive. Cool story, cool characters. We get my girl Uma back on screen, which is fantastic. But how did Charlize Theron's character not know of her existence? Blows my mind. And then,
Right.
like, oh, you were there the whole time? Like, in the first film, we get flashbacks with her and the character that gets locked away that comes back later on from, like, just after the Stone Age.
Yeah,
Like, I
it's
mean,
Middle
it's
Ages.
that far back. How do you not
Like Sumerian
see
times.
a 6 foot 5'11", 6 foot tall, blonde haired, blue eyed woman throughout the ages that's somehow around you everywhere you go, that seemingly can also understand when there's newly born, created, whatever, eternal characters or whatever, immortals, just like they can when they dream about a new one that wakes up or whatever. How are they saying that she was suddenly the first, right? That no one happened to know about, to
No one saw her
the
in their
newest one being the
dreams.
last. And then suddenly we get this tertiary character that would have been really rad had they like written him into the first one somehow. It's like the librarian or like the, like awesome concept. Could have had a ton of fun in that. Even through flashback storytelling, we could have filled half an hour of his awesomeness just with the library that he had. How does he not put
he
this
was a
together?
fighter too.
Yeah.
Like he fought really well. So like, why wasn't he part of their group?
But her group didn't. Half of her group didn't even know he existed. Only she did.
Right.
It's like, well, then how did you know that that this other gal, Uma's character, was the first, and not know that the newest character from the first film is the last of the immortals or whatever. Then you somehow discover that she can take their immortality. And then we have no explanation on the dude character, the antagonist from the first film, can just give his power to other people of immortality. Like, what, guys, we got to really, really get a script that's pretty solid before we just go cut a film, do we not? Like, there's so many holes that I was like, dude, you guys really, you could have spent an entire this movie should have been 2 movies. Yeah. And you could have really developed this in a ton of fun and entertaining ways that wouldn't have been like, huh? Because I did watch it a second time, and there's definite highlights, like as far as action and excitement are concerned. That's great. I will continue to rip on Charlize Theron's fee mullet forever in this movie because she rocks a mullet.
I wonder if she has
reasons that remain unclear, but
weather modification company somewhere.
Feels like it. But there were so many holes that I'm just like, wait, what? There's no way you didn't know that, or that all of you didn't know that, or you know what I mean? Where I was pulled out of the story so much of like head scratching moments that I spent most of the first and almost all of the second watch trying to analyze how they could have come to a plot conclusion this way. But the good news is they did leave it open for a third one. And if they had the balls enough to make a second film, which Netflix almost unilaterally never does, perhaps they are going to try and push down the John Wick excitement train of making this a franchise, which I'll be a fan of because I like the action and I think the concept is neat. But there were so many moments of like, you guys obviously would have known that since the beginning. There's no way you would not have known that. That happened 3 or 4 times that I was kind of just like, really? Like, now it's just, it entered the realm of like science fiction really quickly for me, where they're like, well, explain it away with this one-liner. And you know, like it gave the characters enough room to play, but they were playing with subject matter that was so thin. I thought the acting was great. I really like the actors. I thought the cast is still really wonderful, but it was just too much. Like, there's no way you didn't know that and be shocked by it.
It suffered from poor writing.
Totally, right? Yeah. Like, you know, and then one of my favorite of the immortal characters that gives up his power or whatever, I was just like, you can't just do that. Like, and we get this big emotional scene and Charlize did great in it and all that stuff, but you're just like, how did none of them know that? And then how did he just instinctively know how, after a 2-minute conversation with the librarian that goes, I don't know, this could be possible, judging by this captionless photograph from feudal China or feudal Japan that's been painted in this archival book that I happened across.
Right.
Dun, dun, dun. I was like, dude,
there was a lot of convenient plot points in order to push
like
the
really
story.
So that's where I was just pulled out of it so much that I didn't have as much fun as I really wanted to, because I've been waiting for this movie since I watched the first one. I was, so I'm way low on the Megs list. Maybe if I soften up and rewatch it again and have more fun, I'll bump that Meg counter. But for now, I'm like pretty salty about it. So
fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. No, that's fair. How many Megs?
We'll go 4.5 mags. We'll go with the tail end though. Yeah, it just
tail end. Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of a overall disappointment with the sequel that we were really anticipating.
Yeah, it's a fun watch. I'll give them that. But if you were looking for some reasons why Uma Thurman's character was the way she was, you're not gonna get them. And if you're looking for answers to the beginning and the ending of this, you're probably not going to get there. And then the whole power transfer thing, you're going to be like, well, that would have solved many problems in the first one if they knew how to do that. And where the fuck was the librarian then? Because clearly he's been around for 125 years or 325 years, whatever they said. It's just like, dude, what?
He didn't think to pick up a phone and go, hey, you guys, I just read something in this old manual.
Well, apparently two of her team didn't even know he existed. Only she did. But like, even if that was remained a secret for reasons that could have been cool plot development too, they'd executed that poorly. So I don't know. I was just salty about it. Yeah.
Well, I watched another movie, and I watched this one last night, and um, this movie was I saw it. It's called Sinners, and it is getting accolades from all of the movie reviewers. It's at the top of all of their like top 10 movies of 2025 so far.
Mhm.
Everyone's loving this movie. My daughter saw it in the theater. She said she really liked it, but it was, like she likes horror movies and she likes um old-timey music, and this was kind of a perfect blend of those things for her. But I went into it. I'm not a real big fan of the lead actor who's
Michael B.
Michael
Jordan.
B. Yeah,
Mhm.
like he hasn't really been in anything that stood out to me that I really liked. And I've seen him in stuff going all the way back to Chronicle, which was a superhero movie from.
He had moments in Creed, that were
I
like,
never saw the Creed movies.
yeah, I think
so
you'd like him. I think you'd like, because Stallone was
He did
behind a
really
lot of
good
those
in
too.
this.
Yeah, he did good.
Yeah,
I
did
didn't like
great
him in
in
Black
this.
Panther though. I thought he was a little over the top.
yeah, Kilgore.
Yeah.
So or Killmonger.
Sure.
So this movie Sinners, I went
Mhm.
into it, and this is probably one that although it's not super gory, I think you might actually enjoy this one. But went into it kind of blind. I didn't really know what the plot point was that kind of made this a horror genre movie. But man, was it gorgeous.
Mhm.
Every aspect of this movie was filmed properly, and it was done in such a beautiful artistic style. The cinematography, the colorscaping, they really the director really has an eye, and I think this was their directorial debut, Ryan Coogler, if I'm not mistaken. But it's a big hit for him. Oh no, he directed Black Panther,
Yeah, I was gonna
Wakanda
say
Forever.
he's done
Yeah,
some
so
stuff.
and Creed. So, but this was phenomenal. I really enjoyed it. It was a really cool take on ultimately what is loosely a vampire film.
Mhm.
And it's set in the Depression era 30s South, like Alabama, and during Jim Crow kind of era. And so a lot of these topics are touched on. And it, prohibition, that kind of stuff was going on. And these two twin brothers, both played by Michael B. Jordan, that go by Smoke and Stack. So the Smokestack brothers.
Mhm.
And they come back to town where they grew up in. It was either Mississippi, maybe it's Mississippi, and they go back down there and to the small town they grew up in. Hadn't been back in a while, obviously, and you come to find out that they had left when they were probably in their late teens, joined the military, and then got out of the military and then became gangsters up in Chicago, working for Al Capone, doing a lot of his booze running and gambling stuff. And they decide to come back home and kind of start their own thing. And they first start out by opening or buying like an old out of town area, like old slaughterhouse barn,
Mhm.
and they're going to convert it into a juke joint, which is like a blues dance house for African Americans
Mhm.
and for their community. And so they go around kind of gathering their old friends who they're going to have help with this. One of them being their younger cousin, whose dad is a preacher, and he's like strained because he loves music. And plays guitar really well, and then they go get their alcoholic buddy who plays guitar or harmonica and piano really well, played by Delroy Lindo.
I love
And then they
Delroy.
go, yeah, and their buddy who's a bouncer, and then the an Asian couple from town that, you know, just gather a bunch of friends, and their exes kind of come back into play, and they, you know, make amends with them, and so then they go and basically set up this kind of relatively, I mean, it's an illegal, like, party house where they're having gambling and drinking and partying and dancing and music and create this environment. Well, um, during that night, and this all takes place in the matter of like a 24-hour period. So, and then uh, a group of travelers shows up in the dead of night looking to come in, and because of the fact that they are sketchy and they're white people, they're like, no, you don't get to come in, and they can't come in because they're not invited, if you catch my drift. So then ultimately, through different reasonings and different happenings, uh, they keep individually getting picked off one by one as they go outside for whatever reason, and then they have to defend themselves within this building. And it's a but in between all of this going on, they have these absolutely gorgeous, like, blues musical kind of like atmospheric takes that are montages in the middle where, you know, they'll be playing a song and everyone's dancing and have it, and it's just beautifully shot. And there's this one where, you know, because the premise of the movie is that there are, in all cultures, from the Celtic culture to African cultures and all over Native American cultures, that there are a type of shamanistic human who, when they play music so well and so beautifully, that it can heal people and fix stuff and bring joy, but it also invites evil. And that's what invited the evil, is that this preacher boy's on the guitar opened up the veil, and the veil gets opened up. But when he's doing that, the scene that happens is really hypnotic. There's like, it says that it'll open up to the past and to the future. So you're seeing everything from tribal people that just show up and they're just dancing within the context of the music and playing along with it, all the way into like the 80s and 90s kind of rap era in New York and the Bronx. And it's all kind of intermingling together. And it was really beautifully shot. Like, I cannot stress enough, this movie was gorgeous and really fun, paced well, edited
So
well.
these guys are sirens, basically.
Correct. And so what ends up happening is they invite the evil on accident, and things go sideways for our heroes, right? And the brothers and everybody that they invited there. And it becomes a survive till dawn story with an end capper after that. So now I'm going to go into the next part of this, because I really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was beautiful, and from a moviegoer's perspective, between the music and the historic element of it and the beauty of it and just the fun nature and the special effects of the vampires were really cool. All of the different elements to it. There was like a whole scene out in the field where the vampires, who are of Irish descent, do a full kind of Irish folk song that that they all get involved in, and it's really gorgeous to like firelight, and it's just really pretty. The whole thing was fun. Loved it, and would probably give it 8.5 megs, 8.5 megs to the end. Like, I highly recommend this movie. Everyone's correct by putting this on their top 10 list. It was a really well done, probably one of the better vampire movies I've seen in decades. So that being said, the subplot, and I'm going to go into this very delicately because I don't want people to think that I am in any way venerating an institution that is known to be a terrible, bad, egregious institution that did horrible things historically. I'm not doing that.
You're not
all.
about
So
to
I
defend the Nazis here.
I'm not about
Okay.
to defend the Nazis, which everybody who listens to this knows that would never be the case. So,
Yeah.
but that being said, the people that they bought the club from, the guy was the typical Southern, suspenders wearing white man.
Oh, here we go.
And
Yeah.
he is kind of scoffing at these brothers. They end up having to kind of pull guns on him because he's like kind of threatening them, and they threaten him back and say, if you and your clan boys show up here, we'll kill all of you. And he goes, the clan's been gone for years.
Mhm.
And he turns out that
Mr.
he is
Smokestack. I have never. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I know
And
the type. Yeah.
the cartoon of that, right?
Yeah.
So, and he ends up being at the end of the movie, after all the other stuff goes down, and one of the brothers is has to stick around for to finish up some unfinished business,
Mhm.
and more. Dawn has come, and all of a sudden you realize that the guy was actually the head of the Ku Klux Klan. He was the Grand Dragon, and there's a bunch of trucks show up with like 30 dudes to come kill all these black people, or harm them in some way, lynch them or whatever. But they waited till the day to do it, which was a really odd choice. Like, you had them all in the barn. Like, if it didn't make any sense. Like, most of the time the Ku Klux Klan worked at night anyway, under the guard of night, for
Well, not if they had to
obvious
worry about
reasons.
vampires from out of town.
That's also true. But what was and the main character sets up a trap for them and ends up eliminating all these Ku Klux Klan guys that showed up. And they're not in hoods; they were just regular dudes showing up in their work clothes in the daytime. It wasn't like a Klan rally that came after them. But they were all.
We understand the premise for the
Right.
Gotcha.
Now, the thing that kind of made me scratch my head, and this is the part where it's going to get a little sticky, and I will try to be diplomatic about it, because this is not at all, like, I'm not at all saying that the Ku Klux Klan in any way, shape, or form were the good guys of any situation. They were not. They were all, Democrats. No, but they were all, they were all very much, for the most part, evil people who did horrible things to black people during that time frame.
Yeah.
Now, if this movie was trying to paint it that way, I don't think they did the job properly, because the movie being called Sinners, within 24 hours, like I mentioned, these two guys show up into town and bring with them, within the first couple of hours in town, one of the brothers shoots two dudes in the street.
We have Chicago gangsters relocating to the South. Yeah.
Right.
Bringing
Shoots
with them all their bullshit. Yeah.
All of the crime. Like, if they had a checklist of crime, the booze, the beer, and the wine they stole from the Italian and Irish mafia and brought it down there, illegally giving away booze illegally. And you got to think about the people in the South and their communities, and them trying to protect from this type of illegal activity. And they brought in booze, they brought in gambling. One of the guy's wives is into witchcraft and like voodoo stuff. They're hedonistically dancing all over the place in like sexual ways. And in fact, two of the dudes, not one, but two of the dudes in the movie end up having sex with married women.
So we've got adultery check. Prostitution, like, probably check. Gambling check. Yeah. I gotcha.
Magic, crime, murder, alcoholism, like all of these things, all of the crime and sin, as the movie is called, Sinners, was brought to this community. And within 24 hours, all of this stuff was happening, to the point where they were sinning so hard that they brought in an evil force that actually ended up killing a ton of people. So it puts the Ku Klux Klan oddly in the light of they were right, like,
No, like
and that's not
they're the saviors of the town, or the anti-hero was born of
right.
a
And you're
nefarious
supposed
organization that was brought in to represent
right.
a
Yeah, they
force
kind of
a force for stopping all their fun and activity in this place of
right,
debauchery.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so, like, and that's kind of what this tale ended up telling, was because one of the ending scenes is that the preacher boy, the guitar player who brought this, went back to his dad's church, covered in blood, holding the neck of a guitar he just smashed over the head of a vampire after it clawed most of his face off.
Mm-hmm.
And his father goes, "Son, you please, like, in front of the congregation, repent and drop the guitar. It represents the world. It represents your sin. It represents your rebellion against God." And ultimately, the kid doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
He holds onto the guitar, gets in a car, and drives away to go be a blues player for the rest of his life. Now, had the Ku Klux Klan came in and burned down the church and killed and hung everybody in the church, they would be the obvious villains.
Sure.
But I don't think they understood how it ended up playing out, in the regard that they were venerating all the sinners.
So from the viewer's perspective, if the moral compass is traditional, it's hard to look at the Klan in a negative light if they were there to defend the town from the debauchery. And that's what makes this a struggle, because we know that the Klan has never been in a positive light under any circumstance, historically speaking.
But
I don't think they thought that one through. Shit,
they didn't. And so, like, then this guy ends up growing old as a blues player, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the message is, like, essentially, the sin is gonna bring the destruction to your life, but pursue it anyway instead of God. And
because you get a blues career out of it.
Who cares what it does to your community? Indulge entirely in all of your hedonistic concepts. Like, that's literally the message of the movie, and wrapped around the concept of a really cool vampire film. But, like, the Ku Klux Klan situation wasn't even necessary, even though it was probably contextual to that time frame. It wasn't necessary to the plot, like, at all. Like, it could have been removed entirely and was not necessary. You could have had the same story without the Ku Klux Klan element, which is why I thought it was weirdly shoehorned in for it to not play out the message that
character arc could have been fulfilled by the town mayor and sheriff at the same time.
Well, I mean, it wasn't even necessary, because it was, like, literally an add-on. Like, the kid could have, they could have all, like, wiped out the vampires or whatever, and then Preacher Boy could have gotten home and, like, fled in the car, gotten home to his dad, and still made the decision to go be a blues player and reject Christianity. And that would have been the same film. It was this weird need, which the Klan wasn't a part of it at all, except for that one guy who sold the building. He could have walked away and you would never have thought about him again. But they injected this whole side project after the climax of the vampires. They pushed it in and goes, "I have one more thing to handle." And he sets up this, like, 10-minute long, like, ambush scene on the Klan guys. And it was a cool scene, but it didn't move the plot forward at all.
Yeah.
It was just basically like a revenge scene for something that didn't even need to be a part of the storyline. But they felt the need to put it in there to kind of make a point. But I think that point backfired on them, and it was really, really poorly written, because it really, actually, what it did was just say, well, you were doing all the things that the Klan people didn't want brought into their community. Like, they didn't go attack the churchgoers. They attacked all of you guys for bringing in gambling, drugs, boozing, whoring, shooting, murdering, thieving stuff. All of the things that they didn't want in their community, you guys brought in one day. and brought it all in there. And then like,
Yeah,
how am I supposed to
it-
not view like, yeah.
It makes you wonder what the
So-
writer and the directors really thought that movie was about then. Like,
Yeah.
you know, anything that stands for, I don't know, some modicum of old school traditional values should just outright be ignored,
rejected.
and
Yeah.
rejected. And, you know, the town didn't need defending from anything. And look who they brought. It was the Klan. And we all know that those guys are dickheads, historically speaking. Like, that's,
Well, it was
that's kind of
cartoonish.
sad. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was not on my
And-
bingo card this morning. Like, are we going to have a serious look at the Klan's intentions this afternoon? No, I know what you're
Right? Yeah.
I know what you're getting at, but
Yeah, like in no way am I
That's
defending
weird.
the Klan. But like
now I want to watch the
this-
movie.
this movie almost did. Like it almost like made them the good guys. I mean, the framework builds you to be on the side of the brothers who are horrible dudes who left their wives
Mhm.
to go pursue criminal activity in Chicago, hurting the town that they were in, coming back, basically getting their nephew involved in a big horrible situation, getting a bunch of the town people and their old friends killed. All of this stuff, they like their whole lives just were wrecking balls, and anyone who came near them,
Yeah.
their lives got destroyed or they died, you know. And we're supposed to somehow see the guys who wanted to keep that kind of stuff out of their community as the bad guys.
Yep.
And it was a poorly written situation. Like I said, had those guys gone and while they were dancing around and being hedonistic and doing all the criminal activity, if they had gone in the dead of night and burnt the church down and hung his father and
Yeah.
a bunch of those people, that would have been what really villainized the Klan the way I think that they were trying to do.
Yeah.
But they also wanted to make the church and the Christians look bad in the film, so they couldn't do, you know, all of that whole side is just bad.
Of course.
So moralistically, it was way off track. As far as a fun vampire film set in the 30s with cool music and cool lighting and cool atmosphere, awesome movie. But like, if you really wanted to get philosophical about it, it was not well written in the regard of the add-ons that they tried to put on for social points.
Gotcha.
Instead of just writing a good, like, old-timey vampire movie set in the 30s in the South, which would have been cool. But I think that they messed it up by trying to make a social statement.
Yeah. Adding way too much to a plot that didn't really drive the plot further.
That they didn't understand. They
Yeah.
didn't understand the social situation that they were. So, yeah. But yeah, that was...
That's unfortunate.
That's my take on Sinners, which... oddly and just perfectly timing wise leads us right into
The Gospel by Gen Z.
the Gospel by Gen Z.
Wow.
So
Hard to follow that up, the vampire stuff, but we're going to try. We've got Pontius Pilate today, chapter 47. After the sun woke up, they brought Jesus to the governor, and Caiaphas said to Pontius Pilate, "What up, council? My name is Caiaphas, and this is my colleague Annas, and we come to you asking that you cancel this bro Jesus, for he's totally lame and cringe." So Pilate asked Jesus, "WSG," but Jesus left him on red. Pontius said, "For me, it's how Jesus literally isn't even typing." So Pilate asked the Karen, "But what did bro actually do wrong?" And the unholy Karen said, "Bruh, he's for real and op, trust." But Pilate said, "Double it and give it to the next person." So they brought Jesus to King Herod, who was in town. And Herod got salty because Jesus wouldn't simp for him. They put a zesty fit on holy bro and sent him back. Pilate told the chat, "Blood's innocent, y'all doing way too much." But Karen said, "Jesus is a traitor and part of the Rebel Alliance." Pontius slid into his DMs and saying, "Bro, you trying to be king or nah?" Jesus said, "Facts, but my kingdom is built different. Everyone who is of the facts recognizes my number." Pontius said, "What even is facts?" and rolled his eyes. So Pontius said, "Y'all want me to pardon Jesus or nah?" They were allowed one free get out of jail card per year, but Karens were unhinged by now and said, "Free Barabbas." Now Barabbas was a traitor and part of the Rebel Alliance. Pilate said, "Then what about Jesus?" Nobody. Blank space. The unholy Karens, "Cancel him!" All caps. The governor tried to make Jesus look mid and had him scourged. And his guards gave Holy Bro a crown of thorns, and they dressed him in royal fit. And Bro was majestic in his glow down. And they mocked him, saying, "Look, he's him, LOL." But societal anxiety feared him. Then Pontius brought Jesus out, saying, "Ecce homo." I think it's the painting that we're looking at. But Jit was doing the most and for no reason. The Karens neither backed down nor gave up and said this bro said he's the son of the top G. Now Pontius was more shook and said, "Bro, who even are you?" But Jesus this time did not cook. Pontius said, "Bro, just tell me WSG, for I can pop you out or free you. For man's was stressing hard and new blood was valid." But Holy Bro just said, "Bring the receipts. And if you ain't got none, then why we even talking?" So Pontius again asked the Karens to just chill, but they said, "Crucify him, he's an op." And Pontius said, "Bro, you want your king canceled?" And they said, "Nah, fam, we can stand Caesar like you should be doing." And they threatened to cancel him unless he canceled Jesus. So Pilate simped for them and said, "Bet," with unjust riz. That's Pontius Pilate.
Oh man, that is the most wild telling
Yeah.
of the trial of Jesus with Pontius Pilate that I think I've ever heard. So,
Yikes.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's the Gospel by Gen Z.
Fantastic.
So what do we got coming up? You're visiting end of the month. That'll be fun.
I'm not.
You're not.
No, I will not be coming in July.
Okay.
Because the car situation we're still working on.
Gotcha.
And I think we're going to try to take a little bit of a camping break with the fam. We're going to try to do that. But August for sure and September for sure.
Nice.
October I might be going East Coast. I might be going to either South Carolina or Florida, most likely South Carolina, for a couple of days. And
reigniting the passion to move.
No. Will and Amanda, Big Will. They have invited us for his birthday as a surprise. Amanda did for us to show up and surprise Will, which we haven't seen I haven't seen him
long time
in a decade or more.
Yeah.
So we were like, yeah, we should actually try to do that and go out there in October for a couple of days. So it'll probably be like they want us to come out for like 12 days. We're like, no, we'll come out for 3.
We'll come out for a long weekend.
3.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we can't do 12 days. So but yeah, that's my travel schedule itinerary at the moment.
Sure.
So but yeah, outside of that, just kind of gonna hopefully enjoy the summer a little bit, see if I can soak up some sun, and that's about it. Nothing too crazy. I hope we get to go camping a little bit and
yeah, hopefully the national news stuff in your area calms down a little bit and we can actually talk about some fun stuff. Jesus.
Yeah, for sure. So
all right,
but that's it for me.
Yeah, I think that's it for me too. So we will catch y'all presumably next Tuesday, and I hope y'all have an awesome evening.
Thanks, everybody.
See ya.